Welcome back, everyone, to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather, normally here with my co host, Preston Chandler, who couldn't make it today. But together we lead Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation, coaching, and strategy. Today's guest was one I'm excited about. He's got a great book and he brings decades of insight on what it actually takes to lead innovation in complex systems, which honestly, I don't know that there are any other kind, Jonathan. But Jonathan
Sure.
Vehar is here as a leadership development expert, a former VP of product at Dale Carnegie, and co author of How to Make Meetings Not Suck, which I think is something we could all benefit from. He spent over 30 years working with Fortune 100 companies, military leaders, and mid-sized organizations to help leaders and teams drive innovation forward with clarity and courage. As a faculty member at the Center for Creative Leadership and Joint Special Operations University, Jonathan doesn't just teach innovation, he helps leaders build the mindset and systems that make it stick. Jonathan, I can't wait to read your book. I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I think it's going to change my life.
Well, let's
Welcome to
hope
the
so.
show. Yeah,
Thanks, Daryl. Good to be
exactly.
here.
Awesome. Maybe a great place to start. We talk a lot of times about the big flashy things that leaders need to do to lead innovation and kind of build that culture of innovation. But what are some of maybe the overlooked qualities of leaders who are consistently succeeding in creating that culture of innovation?
Yeah, one of my colleagues, a guy by the name of Bob Eckert, he and I have created this list. It's an awkward acronym of itch originally, now pitch, and itch was a little bit strange and uncomfortable. But essentially, it stands for we added one the whole notion of purpose. So it's really all about being clear about purpose. There needs to be integrity, tenacity, courage, curiosity, and humility. And I know you've spent some time talking about courage and curiosity, and those I think are really important when you think about innovation. For me, the sort of the two or the three that are really overlooked. One of them is all about this notion of humility, right? And the from a leadership perspective, humility is really all about being clear that, hey, I don't have all of the ideas. I can't have all the ideas. I'm not going to be the person who's going to make it happen. So I really need to be open to input, thoughts, suggestions, ideas from other people. And so those leaders who really demonstrate that humility, not just talking about how important it is, but really showing what that looks like, being humble, I guess vulnerability is another way to talk about it, being vulnerable to people being willing to say, hey, I don't think that idea is going to work, or maybe there's a better way to do it. Like that's got to happen. So humility is one of them. I think the notion of integrity is really critical because there are so many leaders who say, hey, we really want the big ideas. We really want new ideas. We really want to disrupt. And when push comes to shove, it's kind of like, oh, well, maybe we can do a bigger size or like a different color or a new logo, right? Which is, right. I remember many years ago, I was at an innovation conference and ended up with another big name in the innovation field, like late at night in the bar. And I said, hey, so tell me, so how many of your clients ask for like the big disruptive ideas? And he's like, all of them. And I said, and how many of them actually implement them? He's like, none of them. Exactly right. And so that whole notion of integrity, which is be clear about what you want, do what you say you're going to do. And if you want big ideas, launch them. And if you just want to, we just need to incrementalize our way, which is fine, right? But do that, but be clear about that. And I think the other one is
Yeah.
about purpose, right?
Yeah. Start
And
with the
that notion
why.
of, yeah, being very clear about what are we trying to do and not necessarily telling people here's how to do it, but like, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Now let's explore how do we do that, right?
Yeah. What came up for me when you were talking about that integrity and humility that I think is interesting. So many people talk about empowered teams. If you don't have that integrity and the humility to hand the power over, you're never going to have those empowered teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, so knowing how important that is, like, how do you see leaders make that leap? Like, how do you help leaders make that leap?
Yeah, I think some of it, the whole pursuit of humility is really the way that we've always done it is to sort of hold a mirror up to people's faces. And so just as an example, when we're working with teams, we'll always start by showing this concept that just kind of looks really stupid and dumb and say, hey, just write down your initial thoughts about this idea. Okay, great. We'll come back to that. Right. And we come back to it later after everyone said, yeah, no, I'm open to new ideas. And yeah, I'm really humble. And yeah, I don't prejudge ideas. And we say, okay, so what were the things that you wrote down about this idea? "Oh, it's stupid, it won't work, it blah, 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 blah," right? And then it's like, well, let me just share with you why this idea does work, is in the market, has been successful, what the principles are behind it, and people are kinda like, "Oh, oh, right, so I just did that thing
Yeah.
that I said I didn't do." And fair disclosure, I do that too, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
I
Human
remember
nature.
when yeah, exactly. I remember when they first started talking about the iPhone, I'm like, "Apple phone, like, who needs
Yeah.
that? My StarTAC is awesome," right?
I want the
And,
physical keyboard.
yeah, and I swear I cannot live without my iPhone.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one of those things, humility again, right? And I think it's kinda like the sawtooth graph. Humble, not humble, humble, not
Yeah.
humble, humble.
Well, and the other thing, like, so you were talking about the prototypes, which I love because so like we do design sprints with a lot of organizations. And one of the things we always tell them is the best prototypes kind of look like a kindergarten art project,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because that's how you get good feedback. So maybe talk a little bit about how that humility and that ability to look less than perfect can help leaders get the feedback that they're really craving.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, and one of the things when we talk about prototypes, I don't remember who shared this concept with me, but I think it's really true, which is don't call it a prototype because people then think it's supposed to work. Talk about it
Right.
as an experiment so that we can figure
Yes.
out what we're supposed to learn from it, right? And it's one of those things that so often people are like, "Ooh, I got this great idea. I know exactly what it's gonna look like. Let's put together this prototype or experiment, show it to other people," and then they get feedback. And for some folks, if you don't have that humility, it's demoralizing. But if you go in with the spirit of let's learn from it, then we can advance it and that becomes
Yes.
so much more interesting. And they can become champions in the long run for it because they've contributed to it. There's a guy that I've been coaching for a while and he's got a business. He's got this really good concept for how to like scale it, creating a website, making it accessible to far more people. And one of the things he said is so we're working on the website, we've got a wireframe, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, stop, get some input from some people who are existing customers. Like put together a bunch of 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper with some post-it notes on it, show them what you're thinking about and get their input. Let them move the
Absolutely.
post-it notes, let them try it out. Like wireframes, writing code, all that sort of stuff is expensive. So
Yeah.
let's keep it really simple, right? And if you can't, as you well know, if you can't prototype it in 10 minutes for $10, then you're wasting money and time.
Yeah. I know we use Miro a lot of times just because the people aren't always
Yeah.
right next to you,
Yep.
which I love. I think I worry because I know I want to talk about this for like an hour, and I know we don't have an hour. Maybe because a lot of what we're talking about is for people who are kind of already comfortable with this level of innovation, with this lack of perfection. So maybe how do you help leaders go beyond that maybe that lip service, that innovation theater, and actually get comfortable with some of the risk or maybe perceived risk of being a little bit more experimental?
Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that question. And I think a lot of the coaching, a lot of the facilitation work is about sort of carving out time and space for safe space. We talk a lot of these days about psychological safety, right? One of the things that they have found is a hallmark of the most successful teams at Google, right? Where people are safe to be able to ask questions, learn, contribute, challenge, like all of those things. And so a lot of the work is about carving out that safe space, whether it's a one on one coaching call, whether it's a team facilitation, but it's about, hey, look, we don't have the right answers. We're not going to figure out the right answers, but we're going to explore. And so I think a lot of that is carving that out. And so I think longer term, it's about building that into the project plan, right? So when I was a VP of products at Dale Carnegie, we were building products that would have to scale and be they're training products that would work all over the globe. And so a lot of it was just like, hey, we're gonna take this one bite at a time. We're gonna throw this thing out there, see what happens and see where it goes. And we know that that's going to take time. And it takes longer than everybody wants to, especially me, but it's time well spent if you want to be
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah, and for anyone who's listening, that's Project Aristotle, which is the Google
Thank you.
study that they did. And then the other thing you might want to look at, and I think you kind of mentioned some of the framework, is Timothy Cook's book on the
Yes.
4 stages of psychological safety. So those are two great resources. I love that you're familiar with those. That
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really is great. So we're talking about some of the tactical stuff here, and when we move into the concept of psychological safety, that's kind of starting to move into the world of culture. What are some of the other culture things leaders should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, I think that some of it is about this whole notion of do we have, and it comes back to psychological safety or an extension of it, which is this whole notion of do we have the opportunity to debate, right? And there's
Mhm.
this, I like this distinction of debate versus conflict, right? And so conflict is kind of like, gosh, JL, I really hate you. I think you're an idiot and I don't want to work with you. So I'm going to just like, I'm going to say no to everything that you suggest, right? As opposed to debate, which is, wow, JL, I hear your idea and I have some questions about it. There's some things I don't think work about it. And so let's talk about the idea rather than the conflict of the people. And sometimes from the outside, it's hard to distinguish which one is really going on. But I think that if we've got that psychologically safe culture where we can have those debates, have those challenges, knowing that it's going to get us to a better solution, even though it may not be comfortable in the moment, like that's really helpful.
Yeah.
And so
And,
I
a lot.
go ahead.
Go, go, go.
I was going to say, there was this time when I was at Dale Carnegie, we were launching two new leadership training programs that were going to scale globally. It was replacing a program that had been around for 20 years, and I had this conversation with one of our key stakeholders, and he was really resistant to the new offerings. And I remember we had this very loud conversation. I was in LaGuardia Airport. I can almost tell you what gate I was in. It was one of the C gates. And at one point, I was just so frustrated with this conversation that I said, "Look, do you just want us to stop this whole thing and just go back to the thing that's been around for 20 years?" And he said, "No, no, no, that's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm just suggesting that there are some things you haven't considered." It's like, "Oh, damn it, he's right." Right? And so, so it was like, "All right, great. Well, let's pull a bunch of people." We all got together in New York in June. We sat down. A bunch of people basically threw rocks at the draft design that we had at this point. We listened. They were right. We walked out of there, and those people who were really committed to doing it right, and they didn't hate me. They didn't like what they were seeing. They offered some suggestions, and it made for a much better product. And then when we went to launch it, like at our big convention,
Yeah.
I wasn't the guy on stage trying to push it on everybody. Like, they were the ones saying, "Hey, here's this really cool thing. We've been a
Yeah.
part of it. It is our DNA. It's what we're all about. Let's go."
Yeah.
And it helped make
No,
it
I
successful.
love it. I love it. I know that people, you have to find ways to have those debates that don't raise defenses. And I think one of the tools we've looked at a lot that works really well is this: I wish, I wonder. I like this. I wish we had something like this. I wonder how we might do this. It's a great way to not say, have you thought about this? Did you really do this?
Yeah,
Where's your data on that? Like, it just really helps facilitate that conversation, and it promotes that mindset of curiosity, which I think is the big thing where you have to come in, you have to take the work seriously, but you don't necessarily have to take yourself seriously, right? Like,
absolutely,
so come
absolutely.
in curious, come in willing to have some fun and like to bounce ideas around. So I love everything you're saying.
Yeah. Well,
I am
and
curious.
I think
Oh,
the
no,
other
go, go.
aspect of culture, just building off of that, I love what you're saying about, like, we gotta take the work seriously, but not ourselves. We used to, in fact, we still do, like, share these sort of these guidelines for working together in terms of like, this is how we're going to work together, right? We're going to listen curiously. We're going to acknowledge and appreciate other people's suggestions, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of the list, we always said, "Oh, and by the way, have fun," which was kind of like the throwaway line, which is, "Oh, we're going to have some fun, la di la la." And what we realized after like doing that for, I don't know, maybe a decade was if you pay attention to having fun, if that's like the first thing that you're paying attention to, all the other behaviors show up naturally, right? People,
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually have a talk. I didn't think it was going to get any traction at all. It was called The Power of Play. And like,
yeah,
it's been in 3 conferences this year without hardly any advertising. So I think there is already a huge desire from a lot of people to figure out like, how do we bring some fun back into the work? Like, how do we, because it's like the antidote to stress, in my opinion. So I love that concept. If you want the behaviors we're talking about, maybe the simplest way to get there is to start with some fun.
yeah, I think that's right. Or just be willing to have fun, right? Which is that, we don't have to all sit there in our suits and ties with our hands folded on the table and all that sort of stuff. But it's like, folks, let's lighten up. We can do this, and we're just going to try some new things. We're going to play with ideas. We're going to just sort of have fun. Why not? And that example that I gave of like having people like write down their thoughts around this initial concept that was silly. Like a lot of the big reveal is not like "Oh, you did it wrong, shame on you," but it's just like, "Oh my gosh, look what I just did. I just shut
Yeah.
down this really cool idea." right? And it's just like, it's how we are. How we are
Yeah.
as humans.
No, I'm with you. So before we wrap up, I'm curious, what is something emerging leaders, experienced leaders really need to understand about innovation that we aren't just talking about?
Yeah. I think for me, one of the big things that's shown up over the last I don't know 5 to 10 years is what I like to call the myth of the tada, right? You know, the tada moment, which is just
Yeah.
like, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to show to you the big new product, tada, right? And that usually just kind of there's crickets. Right. And people start telling you, like, all right, let me tell you everything wrong with your big tada moment. And a lot of it comes back to like, how do we engage more people? How do we engage everybody so that, like the story I was talking about with the leadership product for the Dale Carnegie training program, right? Where it's just like people feel like they've had a stake in it, they've had a say in it, so that they're the champions of it. And I think that there are some people, some places where the big ta-da really works, right? I think about Steve Jobs and like his big annual, like, here's the reveal of the next big thing, ta-da, right? And most times when people have to live with it, right? If you're not engaging your stakeholders early, then it all falls apart, right? And so rather than going to your little innovation room and doing your own thing in your innovation department, like pull that out, spread it through the organization, and then think about how do we engage all of our stakeholders so that they know exactly what to expect. They're excited about it because they've been a part of it along the way. There's this great quote from Dale Carnegie. He says, people support a world that they help to create.
Mm,
And so
love that.
when people help to create the thing, the innovation, whatever it is, product, service, etc., they're much more likely to say, "Ooh, I helped build that. That's part of me. Let's go."
Funny thing is, so many people are risk averse right now. And I can't think of something more risky than a big reveal. Like if you just look at what happened with Meta and some of their big reveals, like that's a lot of risk. So for those of you who are listening that are worried about risk, understand that big reveal, that ta-da moment.
That is exactly
Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
don't let survivorship bias make you narrow in on the things that actually worked because for everyone that worked, there's probably 10 that didn't. So yeah, I
Maybe a
love it.
100,
Yeah, for sure.
maybe 10,000. Who knows? Yeah. No, that's true.
Well, I mean, the rate of failure in innovation is somewhere around 90 plus percent, right? So we're not far off there. So, all right. So, Jonathan, we got to wrap up. I really appreciate all the time. This has been a fantastic conversation. I think we had about 10 tangents we could have spent another hour on.
No doubt.
Would like some support in innovation, would like to hear a little bit more about your book. What's the best way for them to reach out and get into contact?
Best thing is to reach out for me on LinkedIn. So Jonathan Vehar. I think there's two of us. The other one's a Lutheran pastor. That's not me. So connect through there, and I'd love to chat about innovation, leadership, or sailing and cars. All good too. Whatever
Love
you
it.
want.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan, and for everyone else who made it all the way to the end with us. While you're down there leaving that 5-star review, I'd love to see a comment about how are you struggling with innovation? Like, where's the risk getting in the way? Where is the culture getting in the way? I'd love to hear some more from everyone on the podcast, just to kind of get an idea of what you're thinking, what you're facing, and then maybe Jonathan and I can help out.
Would love
And
to.
if you know anyone who needs some support, share the episode with them as well, because I think this was a great episode. And I think Jonathan had a lot of great insights to share. So,
JL, thank you.
Jonathan, thank you again. This was fantastic.
A pleasure.
Awesome. And everyone else, we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.